My fellow freelancers, what is going on, guys? Sly here, back at it with another Anthem video for you. As we get ever closer to the upcoming demo, I've been getting a lot of questions recently from close online friends and even friends IRL. Now, I've answered the big one with my What is Anthem video, which I will link at the end of this one, and the second one is, what are the different classes that you can play in Anthem? What kind of abilities do they have? What do they like? And what do they do? So if you also have friends who are wondering the exact same thing, then send them over to my What is Anthem video, as I think it does a pretty good job at going over and explaining everything. But in this video, however, we're going to be taking a look at each Javelin, their functions, their ultimates, abilities, weapons, and more. Once again, guys, this might be a longer video, so let's jump right into it. Anthem is best played, of course, in a squad of 4 with your friends, and even though the game has been built with the solo player in mind, once you get to the end game, or Elder Game as Bulwark calls it, squad play is going to be crucial. I was actually really surprised at just how deep the team system is going to be, and while we really don't know the full extent of things, I'll go over about everything that we do know and the things I could talk about. So first up, the classes of Anthem. Now most MMO-esque or MMORPG games like Anthem are built around different classes. That's really the core experience here. We have the Ranger, the Colossus, the Storm, and finally the newest one, the Interceptor. Each one fulfills a kind of stereotypical role. Ranger is the all-around best suited. It's best for beginners, or modded in such a way that it leans more towards a different role later in the end game. The Colossus is the quote-unquote tank of the game, has tons of armor, can take lots of damage, but it can also dish out large amounts of damage as well. And on top of that, MMO classes that are usually labeled as a tank usually have some kind of ability that allows it to control enemy aggression. This is known as taking aggro, and the Colossus has multiple tools to do just that. The Storm is the de facto support and caster class. It uses long-range attacks along with the ability to place defenses from far away. The Storm has special technology that gives it a unique hovering shield ability, and it's a more advanced suit that is a little harder to manage. I guess you could say it's an expert suit, but when used properly, it can absolutely dominate the battlefield. And finally, the newest Javelin or class, the Interceptor. Now, like I said in previous videos, I feel it has a really big Warframe influence. Its fast maneuvers, twists, flips, dodges, along with different weapon platforms and abilities, make this the kind of, DPS shock trooper type of class. Now, in most games that feature classes, if you want to switch over and use a different class, then you have to log out and build up an entirely new character from scratch, and then use it long enough to get the high end-game weapons to make it as functional as possible. The Division attempted to change this with unique armor called gear sets, and while it did help, it just wasn't as good as a separate character spec'd out from the start. Within Anthem, you are going to be one person, an exosuit pilot known as a Lancer. You are part of the Freelancers, a faction of Javelin pilots. The pilot upgrade path is the main and only upgrade path available to you, and you can choose what's important to you within this path. And then on top of that, you take your desired Javelin based on the activity that you're about to face, or what your team needs to succeed. You can switch classes at either your home base for Tarsus, or you can go to your mobile forward operation base called a Strider. With the addition of fast traveling, it should make changing suits an absolute breeze. As far as each individual suit, let's take a look at what we know so far. As always, when talking about a game that has yet to debut, things are subject to change, or may have changed already, and this is everything that I know so far. Now, before diving into specifics, each Javelin has 2 intrinsic abilities, one melee and one utility. Each Javelin also has 3 ability slots and can wield 2 handheld weapons. It's also worth noting that you cannot change the intrinsic abilities, melee or utility, as these are part of the suit. So, with that said, guys, let's start out with the Ranger. Now, like I mentioned, Ranger, middle range of everything here. Armor, mobility, speed, and weapons. We'll get to the ultimate here in a second, which of course is the juicy part. But as for its basic weaponry, it can use just about all of the handheld weapons available. Assault rifle, sniper, shotgun, SMG, pistol, etc. The only exclusions here are heavy weapons, which only the Colossus can utilize. Its intrinsic melee ability is called Shock Mace. You pull out this giant mace looking thing and then using it deals out electricity damage, which can be used as a status effect primer, something we'll talk about a little later. Its intrinsic utility ability is a dodge, which gives the Ranger crazy maneuverability. You can jump, dodge, double jump, and then take off flying, which makes it seem like you can get out of any situation. Its 3 abilities are where the Ranger shines. Being a versatile class of Javelin, it has numerous offensive, defensive, and support characteristics. Starting with the good old grenade, combos are a huge part of undertaking enemies of Anthem, and I believe they're going to be crucial for the end game. With that, grenades make great combo starters as they are easy to throw, can be launched from anywhere, and most importantly, as a last resort or from a safe distance. So this first group is entirely dedicated to different grenades. The Ranger can equip one of the following. We have the Frag Grenade, the Inferno Grenade, Fire Grenade, which sets enemies on fire. We have a Frost Grenade, damages and freezes enemies in place. A Seeker Grenade splits into multiple smaller grenades that seek out the nearest enemy. And finally, the Sticky Bomb attaches to a single target. Where all the other grenades are area of effect or AoE attacks, this one is a contained high damage blast that only damages the target it sticks to for the most part. Next up, the Assault Launcher. Now, most Javelins have some kind of launcher, and the Ranger can wield one of the following at a given time. We have a Homing Missile, which is fired and seeks out a target for a small AoE explosion. We have Energy Pulse, unleashes a blast of pure energy, hitting a single target with tons of force. After that, Spark Beam, a sustained beam of energy that deals continuous damage, assumingly if you can keep the beam on target. And then next up, Venom Darts, launches a volley of darts that seek out targets, dealing acid damage. Now, it's not 100% clear or not, but from what I've seen, acid attacks weaken armor, allowing the team to deal more damage to enemies that are affected by acid. However, I haven't seen this confirmed yet, so take that as you will. And finally, the last ability here in this category, we have Blast Missile. Fires a single missile for a huge area of effect damage. Alright guys, next up, let's check out the Ranger's support abilities. First up, Bulwark Point, which allows the Ranger to deploy a spherical shield that deflects incoming projectiles. And the other is Muster Point, creates a field which increases weapon damage for teammates who enter its radius. Now these last two here are eerily similar to the Titan's ability in Destiny 1 known as Blessings of Light. However, the size in Anthem is much larger. Alright y'all, and finally let's talk about the ultimate or super for the Ranger. Now each Javelin has a game-changing attack capable of turning the tide on the battlefield. Ultimates do not charge as fast as abilities, and so far each Javelin seems to have only one offensive super. For the Ranger, it's called Multi-Target Missile Battery. This rocket pod contains quite a few high-damage tracking missiles that can deal precise damage to a wide area of the battlefield, or lots of damage to one single target, as you see here. Now, it's not yet known if other abilities exist or if a later DLC will add on new abilities, but I personally believe many more abilities will be available as we get into the endgame. The ones we know of so far are probably just, within the first part of the story. Next up, the tank of the group, let's talk about the Colossus. Now this beast is actually a successor to the first suit type created by General Helena Tarsis. It was called the Javelin of Dawn. The Colossus is the only Javelin that can use a type of weapon called heavy weapons. However, it cannot use the two smaller weapon types, pistols and submachine guns. Each Javelin, the Colossus included, can carry 2 weapons at a time. The Colossus has an awesome intrinsic utility perk where it can bring out an armor-plated shield. This shield helps with tanking enemy damage, pushing through enemy lines, or even clearing minefields. The shield does have kind of a health bar, as you can see here, and if you push it too hard, the shield does break. However, once cooled down, you can use it as many times as you want. When you use the shield along with the Colossus's taunt ability, you then truly become a tank. Its intrinsic melee ability is called Heavy Smash. Kind of has a Hulk kind of sound to it. It uses all that weighty armor as a weapon. While in the air, you can do an AoE ground pound sort of attack, or if you're on foot, it has a hammering melee attack. Moving on to the Colossus's launcher, the Colossus actually has 2 of them here, a shoulder-mounted Ordinance Launcher and then an Assault Launcher like the Javelin, where it's mounted on the arm or wrist area. So first up, the Colossus has the following abilities through its Ordinance Launcher, which is mounted on its shoulder. High Explosive Mortar, launches an explosive projectile that deals heavy area of effect damage. After that, Burst Mortar, fires a volley of smaller mortars that spread out to damage a wide area, kind of like a smaller version of carpet bombing. Next, Firewall Mortar fires a specialized mortar that ignites a wall of flame, heavily damaging enemies that try to move through it. Now, that would be awesome for crowd control. Next up, Lightning Coil strikes a single random target with an arc of electricity in front of the Colossus. This attack sets up for combo damage by rendering them with a status effect. And finally, we have Shock Coil. Emits waves of electricity out from the Colossus, damages all enemies nearby. Moving on to the Assault Launcher and its different attacks. First up, Heavy Cannon. Fires a large single rocket in a targeted direction. Next, Flamethrower unleashes a continuous stream of fire to ignite enemies. We've seen this quite a few times throughout various streams and trailers. After that, we have Flak Cannon, barrages nearby enemies with short-range arc of projectiles, and then Railgun, devastates a single target with a forceful and precise kinetic round. And then finally, after that, we have Acid Spitter, expels an acid projectile to damage enemies. As for its support, not too decked out as much as the others, but it does have two useful abilities you can choose from. There is a stereotypical tank ability called Taunt, which forces all enemies within a certain radius to divert their attacks to the Colossus, and the other is Deflector Pulse, which gives all nearby allies a damage resistance buff for a certain amount of time. Moving on to the good stuff, its ultimate or super ability, we have the Siege Cannon or Siege Mortar. These super powerful high damage bombs are lobbed to an area to deal huge amounts of damage. I refer to them as like mini nukes. You can either use the shots on one target for lots of boss damage, or you can devastate an entire battlefield with well placed shots. Good for clearing out entire groups in just a few seconds. The Colossus has its focus set to damage mitigation and explosive power. However, with Anthem's unique modding solution, you can make the Colossus the brute force powerhouse, supporting tank, or much more. And that's something I really can't wait to dive in and check out, is how you can mod these different ways to make them suit a different purpose. Alright guys, we are halfway done, 2 more to go, and next on the list, a fan favorite, the Storm, kind of the, the warlock of the group, a more mystical type of javelin. It was actually created by another human faction in Anthem known as the Dominion. It uses a certain kind of technology called seals, S-E-A-L-S, to control different elements. Seal's technology boosts the dormant kinesis power found within the Javelin's Lancer, aka the pilot. The Storm is tied into the story, and I'm really excited to unravel all of its secrets. The Storm is usually found as a background character, mostly support with devastating long-range area of effect attacks. However, it does have some targeting ones. This Javelin is the combo extraordinaire, and its ultimate is probably the flashiest out of them all. It has fairly weak armor, and it relies on hovering along with its protective energy shield to get the job done. Its utility ability is also a dodge, however, its way of dodging is more like a blink or teleport. This exosuit is the most complex to use, and it takes a true expert to be able to effectively use the Storm. However, once you learn how to use it, you realize just how game-changing this Javelin can be. The Storm is similar to the Ranger in the ability to use every weapon type in the game, once again except for the heavy weapons, which are unique to the Colossus. Its melee ability, the intrinsic melee ability, is called Fiery Strike. The Storm uses the Seal's technology located on its arm to deliver an explosive flash that deals damage and knocks back enemies that have gotten too close. This gives the Storm time to reposition and then land a first strike. Now the Storm is a little different. Using its Seal's technology, it uses different kinesis gear in the form of abilities. Gear is picked up as loot during missions, and just like other Javelins, you can swap or equip one at a time from each section. The Storm has Blast Seals, Focus Seals, and then Support Seals. Once again, you can only use one in each area. Starting with Blast Seals, you can choose between Lightning Strike, a targeted strike that deals lightning damage in an area. After that, we have Ice Storm, creates a field of ice that deals damage, rapidly building to the final explosion of frost. And then we have Flame Burst, a quick explosion that deals fire damage at a targeted location. Next, Rime Blast. Fires a flurry of ice projectiles that deal damage and freezes close-range targets. And then after that, Living Flame. This burst of flame comes alive and seeks out targets, which are then ignited. Moving on to the next type of seals, we have Focus Seals. As the others, you can only equip one of the following. First up, Hoarfrost Shards, rapid-fire shards of ice that slowly freeze a single target in place. Next is Fireball, a versatile fire ability that can be fired quickly in small shots or charged to create a larger projectile that explodes. After that, Ball Lightning, a discharge of electric energy that can be bounced off of walls to reach targets behind cover. And then we have Glacial Beam, fires a beam of powerful ice energy in a targeted direction. And finally, Arc Burst, unleashes a blast of lightning that will leap to nearby targets for heavy damage. Moving on to the next seals type of technology, we have the Storm's support seals. Here you can equip one of two support seals. The first is called Wind Wall, a tall defensive wall of wind that deflects incoming enemy projectiles. I also believe that enemies can shoot out of the wall as well. The second support ability is called Nexus, creates a field which provides gear cooldown reduction to teammates who enter its radius. Basically increased ability cooldowns for everyone. And finally, one of the more awesome ultimates in the game, the Storm's ultimate called Elemental Storm. Manipulating the raw force of the Anthem, the Storm emits successive blasts of frost, electricity, and fire, ending with all three of them slamming down to the ground in a meteoric finale. It's quite the earth-shaking, damage-dealing AoE effect. So far, my favorite without a doubt. As you can see, the Storm has plenty of offensive capabilities, but most of them are made to be cast at range. And notice that they're all elemental, so they're really going to be useful for combo damage. Its weak shield and armor will require lots of intricate modding and planning with weapon inscriptions, so that you can make the most of what the Storm has to offer. I'm willing to bet that once the right combination is found, the Storm's going to be quite the popular Javelin. Alright guys, getting to the final exosuit here, we have the newest one to join the lineup, the Interceptor. As the smallest and sleekest of the four Javelins, the Interceptor is favored by the Corvus group, a clandestine shadow group that deploys the Interceptor and is favored by their long-range scouts for infiltrations and assassinations. The Interceptor is lightly armored and extremely quick. It specializes in close-quarter combat where it can swoop in at high speeds, inflict damage while weakening the rest, and then dodging away before the enemy can react to it. It's another co-DPS support class. Now, as I've mentioned before, it heavily reminds me of Warframe, and that's really not a bad thing at all. Its intrinsic melee ability is called Double-Bladed Daggers. These twin knives deliver a multi-hit flurry of slashes, dealing damage in a chain of powerful attacks that can be continued indefinitely. However, it's also worth noting that the game is still in development, and in a prior live stream, they did talk about certain melee cooldowns that needed managing. So I'm not really sure what that's about. We're going to have to wait to find out more. As for its intrinsic utility ability, it's quite unique. Now, I haven't been able to find the name of this ability, but it can absorb certain elemental status effects and then discharge them onto an enemy it comes into contact with. It hasn't been seen or used very often, but if you watch gameplay of the Interceptor, you can see a light aura around it at times. That's what the aura is. As for the abilities and weapons, Interceptors can use every weapon in the game except, of course, heavy weapons, and they have 3 different groups of systems where you can deploy your gear or abilities. The 3 systems here, we have Assault Systems, Strike Systems, and then Support Systems. Once again, you can only equip one piece of gear at a time within each system. Starting with Assault Systems, first up, Seeker Glaive throws out razor-sharp projectiles that seek out its nearest target. These ninja star-like things are what you are seeing in action right here on screen. Next, Acid Bomb, a grenade which explodes and covers the enemy in acid. We have Cryo Glaive, launches a projectile that locks onto nearby targets and freezes it on impact. After that, Cluster Mine throws out a group of mines onto a targeted area which explodes on contact with an enemy. And finally, we have Spark Dash, which is pretty unique. It's a forward dash that leaves behind a trail of electricity that damages enemies. More than likely, this is also a primer that can start the makings of a combo. Moving on to the next system, Strike Systems. Its first gear or ability is called Star Strike. Charges an enemy with energy. This energy then explodes after a delay. This explosion deals increased damage if the target is destroyed before the full delay. Next up, Plasma Star tosses a plasma-powered shuriken at a single target, effective for long-range encounters. And after that, we have Nova Strike, another unique ability. Sends out a projection of the Interceptor, which runs forward and attacks any enemy it comes into contact with. Next, we have Tempest Strike, a devastating single-target attack that can stun smaller enemies. And finally, Corrosive Spray, unleashes a jet of corrosive acid that damages enemies. As for the last system, we have the Interceptor's support system. Like the others, it offers 2 support abilities. First one is Target Beacon, marks a target for increased damage, which will switch to another enemy if the first marked target is destroyed. And the final support ability is called Rally Cry, removes status effects from all nearby allies, which I know is going to be extremely useful for bosses that stun or have elemental attacks. As for the Interceptor's ultimate attack, I've mentioned this in other videos, not very flashy, but definitely gets the job done. It's called Assassin's Blades. The Interceptor becomes supercharged, arming its twin blades and carving through enemies at high speed. The Javelin is also briefly immune to damage during this time as well. And there we have it, ladies and gents, all of the abilities that we know of so far. Once again, it's good to know that the game is still not finished and quite a few things could change. Some of these abilities may not ship with the game. They could just replace, one, a few, maybe none of them, or perhaps all. We won't know for sure until February 15th when early access starts on PC. But until then, this is what we know, and I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully this video will give you a better idea of what Javelin you want to hop into. Also, it's good to keep in mind that there are other pieces of gear known as components. These special gear mods can adjust javelins in various ways. Add in the fact that high-level weapons and gear come with inscriptions, aka random rolls or random talents. That means you can customize your javelin to an extreme degree. But for now, that is about it, guys. As always, thank you for watching another Slynation Anthem video. If you want to stay up to date on everything Anthem related, then subscribe and keep those eyes peeled for plenty more videos coming out as we creep ever closer to launch. If you're new to the channel, then welcome, my friend. I'm glad you found your way here and hope you enjoyed it. Spank the thumbs up, but only if you enjoyed yourself, and comment down below and let me know which Javelin you are most looking forward to. Pretty sure I'll be sticking with a Ranger or Storm for the most part, but in reality, I'll probably be whatever my team needs me to be. Anyways, I'm out, guys. Thanks again, and I hope you are having a fan-freaking-tastic new year. Feel free to check me out on Twitter or Facebook at Slynation or Slynation Gaming on the FB. Take care, freelancers, and keep those eyes peeled for many, many more vids coming out soon. But until then, this is your dude Sly, and I'll catch you all next time.